Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2013 Advanced. In the previous section we downloaded and prepared some data for charting, and this was stock data, stock prices for a particular stock. And what I've done since then is I've removed quite a bit of the older data. Now the only reason for doing that was that it will be easier to format and understand some of the charts if we've got a bit less data in them. So I've deleted the data prior to the year 2010. That still leaves us an awful lot of data to work with. And the first thing we're going to do is to draw a straightforward line chart or line graph. Now, I mentioned at the end of the previous section that the column order here has got a bit strange, but that really doesn't matter because for the different types of chart we're going to need to draw, we'll need different combinations of these columns. To do a straightforward line graph of the adjusted close, we need column A for the date, so select that, hold down the control key, select adjusted close, that's column G, and then insert and go for the line graph option, 2D line. Let's just take the first one, and there we have our adjusted close line graph. One of the interesting things about this very straightforward example is that you can see how much the price varied over the relatively short period. We're talking about a period of just over 3 years. You can see it's dipped down to a price of about 11, and then the high was a price of about sort of 27.5, something like that. So you can see how using the adjustment in the way we did, the ratio for the high and low prices, is more realistic than reducing the high and low prices by fixed amounts like the 38 cents example that we looked at. So that's a straightforward line graph showing the variation of price over a period of about 3 years. Now in a moment I'm going to look at the specialist stock charts that we can use here, which will give us a fuller picture of trading in this stock over that period of time. But I want to take this opportunity to show you a more general way of dealing with showing two different sorts of information on the same chart. Now at the moment I've got the adjusted close figures as a line chart over that 3-year period. Supposing I wanted to put the volume figures on as well. Now the most obvious issue there of course would be that adjusted close is in dollars. I haven't got labels on these axes, but these are US dollars, whereas volume figures would be numbers of shares traded. But I can plot two completely different things on a chart, and let's do that now so that we can actually get a picture of how the volume of trade has varied as the price has. Now in order to do this I'm going to put together the 3 columns that I need. So I'm going to insert a couple of columns here, and then I'm going to copy the adjusted close figures and the volume figures, paste them into position, and then I'm going to select these 3 columns and plot these 3 columns. So again I'm going for the line chart option, the line graph option, and I'm just going to use that first option again. Now what you see is really something that doesn't look particularly helpful at first, because you can see that I've got a chart. The units that are used on the vertical axis are clearly volume units, and so the figures related to adjusted close, that's the blue line, is right down here because the blue values are going to be tiny, their prices in dollars, compared to the thousands in the values of the volume. So what I need to do is to change this chart so that it deals with 2 different variables using 2 different axes. Now fortunately that's pretty easy to do. If I just select the volume figures here and right click, select Format Data Series, then for that volume data series I can change it from being plotted on the primary axis to being plotted on the secondary axis. That's the secondary vertical axis. So click on secondary, close that, and now we can see something that's quite a bit more meaningful. And it's quite a bit more meaningful in that we can see that the volume figures, although they crash into the adjusted close figures in places, you can certainly see the relationship between them. One of the very common features here, of course, is that when you get peaks and troughs in the price, that's where you tend to get the peaks in the volume as well, as is particularly well indicated here. Now don't forget that at the moment both of these graphs are line graphs, and for either of them we can adjust their axis. It's the primary axis for adjusted close over here, and it's the secondary axis for volume over here. You may want to do some work on this date axis as well, chart title, etc. So when you're dealing with financial data, stock data, in fact any sort of data, that's the sort of way that you can plot two things on the same chart. So let's turn our attention now back to the specialist stock charts that we can draw and what sort of information they can give us. Well, let's first of all look at some of the types of stock chart. So we basically have these four types. We have a high-low close chart, an open high-low close chart, a volume high-low close chart, and a volume open high-low close chart. Now with each of those, the key thing is that you need to get the data on your worksheet in the right order. So let's start with the first one there. Let's start with high-low close. What you're going to do with high-low close, and I'll do this on the data I've got here and come back to you in a moment, is to basically set up my columns of high-low close. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than plot the whole of these four columns, which would give me something that's pretty much unreadable, I'm just going to plot the last couple of weeks worth. So let me just select down to just about say the beginning of May, and then I'm going to insert stock high-low close. That's the one I want. Click on OK, and I've now got a high-low close chart. Now for you to be looking at this, you're going to find it very difficult to read this on your screen, given that I've recorded it on mine and I can barely read it. But basically it should give you the general idea. The vertical bar on each day indicates high price and low price, and somewhere on there you'll see a little marker, and the marker is the closing price. So obviously if the marker is near the top, it closed near the top of its range in the day. Near the bottom, it closed near the bottom of its range in the day. Now if you can imagine plotting that for 3 years worth of data, which I could have done, you wouldn't have been able to make out those vertical bars, never mind the little markers on them, which are tiny little markers. And to be fair, you can go in and format this to make the markers more obvious. One of the continuing complaints, if you like, about some of these stock charts in Excel is that there is some work needed to improve the readability of them with the default settings, but you can go in and adjust them yourself. One of the other options available with high-low close is, instead of plotting by day, you can plot by longer periods, for example by week or by month. So just back at the source data here, one of the options I might have, let's suppose that I wanted to do a high-low close chart, but I wanted to do it on monthly data. If I select monthly on the Alliance Bernstein holding page in Yahoo Finance, click on Get Prices, and then allowing for the fact that I'll see dividends every 3 months probably, approximately, then I could download the monthly figures and use the adjusted high, adjusted low, adjusted close monthly figures. That would give me a good picture over a long period of time. Okay, so that's the high-low close chart. Let's just finish this section by looking at one of these specialist stock charts, but with volume included as well. Okay, I've set these columns up now for the works: volume, open, high, low, close. I'm going to select, say, back to the beginning of May again to give me an understandable amount, and then it's into the stock charts. And the final type of stock chart, this one, volume, open, high, low, close. Click on OK. Notice how with these ones that the weekends are left blank. I would expect that there are some stock markets somewhere in the world that work at weekends. I don't ever refer to them, but there we are. And here you can see with a number of markers, volume, that's the blue, and then you've got markers showing opening price, adjusted high, adjusted low, adjusted close. The symbols that are used in this chart are called candlesticks. The candlesticks have a body. A candlestick with a white body indicates a price that went up during a period. A black body indicates a price that went down. The range of prices for the whole of the period is from the top of the top wick to the bottom of the lower wick. So during the period in question, whether it's a day or a week or a month or whatever, the lowest price is the bottom of the lower wick, the highest price is the top of the upper wick. The body represents the range between the open and close. For a white candlestick, therefore, the bottom of the body indicates the opening price and the top of the body represents the closing price. For a black candlestick like this one, it must have started at that figure and closed at a lower figure, and in fact the wick below this one indicates that at one stage during the period it was actually lower than the closing price for the period that's indicated by the bottom of the body of that black candlestick. So that's how to interpret candlesticks. Now, I don't particularly like having these bars crashing into the candlesticks, so I'm going to choose that right hand axis there, format the axis, and I'm going to make the maximum on the axis, let's make it 1,000,000. And in doing that, as you can see, I've pretty much moved the bars away from the candlesticks. There's just a slight overlap there, so I may want to adjust it a little bit more. And obviously I've got label titles, etc. to do. So that's pretty much it on stock charts. But I'm going to leave you now with an exercise to do. So here is the exercise for you to do. My answer to this is going to be example 16. I just want you to do a volume high low close chart. So that's VHLC, so there's no open in it, just volume high low close. And I want you to do it for MSFT, that's Microsoft, MSFT is the symbol, and I just want you to do it for the last 12 working days. Obviously you'll be doing that on a different day to the day that I'm doing it, but my answer will be example 16. That's it for this section. I'll see you in the next one.